Welcome to Turned Out a Punk. Today on the show, Ken Casey is back. You may know Ken from the Dropkick Murphys. I love talking to Ken anytime I get a chance to, and he comes on the show. There's only been twice, but I love both of these conversations. The Dropkick Murphys have a new album. As I tell Ken here, this caught me off guard because I really, really love this record. Not that I wouldn't like their new record, but I mean, like, I actually dig this record for the people quite a bit. And you can check it out now, or to the vinyl, or to the CD from the band. I think this is kind of like self-released. I should have asked him that. Would have been a good question. Well, save it for part 3. You can check it out streaming anywhere that you listen to music streaming. And they were going on tour. They are going on tour. They're in Europe tonight for the next few weeks. You can check out the dates in the description. There'll be a link to it, or just go to the dropkickmurphys.com and grab yourself tickets. And they will be going around the United States starting in February and hopefully coming to a city near you. And when we talk about Boston bands, I kind of forgot the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones would have been a very popular Boston band, but kind of from a slightly different era. This will make sense when you get to that part. I think that's about it. So check out the new For the People album by the Dropkick Murphys. Thank you very much to Ken for coming back on the show. If you want to find out more information about Turned Out a Punk, you can follow us on all those social medias out there at Turned Out a Punk. There's a YouTube channel. The show is produced and booked by my little brother, Tristan Abraham. Thank you, Tristan, for all the hard work you do. And you can find me on Instagram at Left for Damian. Oh, there's also a TikTok page and all that stuff at Turned Out a Punk. But that's it. All right. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Ken Casey on Turned Out a Punk. Ken, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back on the show.
I'm very excited to talk to you for a lot of reasons today. And so it's almost been like 2 years to the, I think it was 2 years to the day once we were going to last speak, but now it's like 2 years and about a month since we last spoke. And I feel like the world's in a much more dark place now than it was 2 years ago.
Oh boy, was it ever? I mean, I felt like even our conversation 2 years ago, only because the rhetoric and the division and all that was bad. But in comparison, things seemed rosy in comparison. And I never would have envisioned we'd be back. Well, not even back. That would be back and then some. It's sad and scary times we live in.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll wind up talking about it. But I did want to kind of talk to you about the new record because I find it's rare I say this to a band that's been around for as long as you guys have been around, but I fucking love your new record. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that if you're a punk rock band, these times might, give you just that little bit of extra venom and motivation and inspiration. And then also that combined with doing the 2 acoustic albums before, I think we were really ready to, make a hard hitting, impactful album. And I feel like we did.
Well, you sing a song about one of my favorite people in the world, one of the most feared people in the world for a lot of people, Fletcher from Pennywise with the big man. And there's so many crazy stories that I have, and I'm sure you have as well. And I'm wondering if you have
Yeah.
a favorite that's obviously safe for mass consumption.
Well, I've always been on, we always joke because around us, he's fairly tame, as it says in the song. He's always been on his best behavior around us, just because he knows, like most of us at this point in our lives, are like sober and stuff, and he's cool like that. Like, if that's how you roll, I'm not gonna like bring my mess to you. Now, his bandmates might say otherwise, but I don't have to share a bus with him. But going back to the Warp Tour days when I saw just so many crazy antics, like he used to, you'd be on stage and all of a sudden, I mean, feel something sting you and he'd be shooting you with a BB gun. And he only shot the bands he liked. That was just playful for him. But when you're trying to concentrate on what you next note or your next lyric while you're dodging BBs coming at you. It makes playing a little bit more challenging. Then I would see him oftentimes be kind of the protector for a lot of people on the Warped Tour if there was whether it might be an up and coming band that was really full of themselves. Uh, and they'd oftentimes give Kevin Lyman, the head of the tour, a hard time, and uh, Fletcher was the muscle for that because you have to keep in mind Kevin would always would book a lot of bands on the side stage, and then between when he booked them, say in the beginning of the year in the summer, they might have, I'm talking newer bands or whatever, and they might have an album come out, and by the time the summer hits, they're the biggest thing on the radio, and they're saying, "Hey, we're not playing the side stage anymore." And the owner of the Warped Tour, Kevin Lyman, would say, "Well, what do you want me to do? I booked you on the side stage. You want me to tell Pennywise or Dropkick Murphys that have been loyal to me and I've been loyal to them that they gotta go to the side stage because you have a radio hit?" And they'd get in his face a lot, and there comes Fletcher. And one of my favorites was watching him with my own eyes. When Kid Rock was in Kevin's face, he came up and tore all the chains off his neck, picked them up over his head, professional wrestling style, and threw them in the bushes. And that was the last Kid Rock had to say about anything, and he did that to a few other bands as well.
Last time we were on tour with him was in Australia, and 30 Seconds to Mars was on tour, and he was hunting for Jared Leto. Like,
You don't want to be someone he's hunting.
no, the tour ended with Fletcher walking on stage during the Bronx set, smashing a vodka bottle and stabbing himself. I think it was like 7 times in the stomach.
Yeah, see, he does. See, he say those kind of antics he doesn't do in front of us. I think he thinks we'll judge him too much or something. Or worse, write a song.
I feel like the opposite end of this sort of amazing pond that is punk rock is Billy Bragg, who you
Yeah.
also sing with on the record. Friend of the show, an amazing human being in all my experiences with him. But I wonder what it's like to kind of to be on a song doing that with him.
Well, ironically, with all these years, playing music and being such a fan and being so inspired by him, we had never crossed paths. And some bands you cross paths with, and some you don't. And we had a few phone calls over the years, maybe, but we got to meet him. He was doing a show in Boston. It was a benefit for something, and it was right around our St. Patrick's Day shows. And we've played There's Power in a Union before we go on stage for decades. And so we thought, well, what a cool way to open the show would be, Billy Bragg playing that live. And then we came right out and joined him into our first song, and he stayed on stage, which he had the funniest quote afterwards. He was so hyped up like a little kid because even when Billy plays electric, it's more of a clean telly sound. When he's with the full band, whereas we're pretty like loud stage volume. So we went out of him doing Power in the Union, just him and an electric guitar. And then we came out right behind him and kicked into the Workers song and full volume. And after the show, he says, "I felt like I was in the Clash for 3.5 minutes." Just talking about the volume and stuff and the power. It was funny. And he hung out all weekend, with our families. And you want to know if someone's solid, throw them right into the mix, having to hang with your family and your friends and stuff. And we just felt like, man, this guy is cut from the same cloth as us. And then a week later, we were together on the down at Carnegie Hall. We did the tribute memorial to Shane and Sinead, and we got to spend a night together there with a bunch of other great artists. And we were just like, Billy Bragg I knew he was our people, but like he's really our people. And so we knew we wanted to ask him to be on the record. And when we asked him to be on School Days Over, which is the only cover on the album, it's a Ewan McCall song, and he said, believe it or not, that's one of my favorite all-time songs. He said, I've actually sang that with Kirsty on a picket line for a miners' strike in England. And I had no idea that. And Kirsty wasn't known for doing her father's songs at all. So it was kind of a unique thing that they had done that song together. And what I love about, in particular, about Billy on that song is it's actually not in a key he sings in a lot. So he's got a little bit of a deeper, like, for punk rock, it's not, it's just a little more, uh, like from the gut than Billy sings a lot of. And I know, I just thought that was cool that like it's Billy Bragg, but you also get like a little different version of Billy Bragg that you might not hear on one of his records. And it's all in all, it was just amazing experience getting to know him personally.
Have you heard the riff raff stuff that he did, like pre Billy Bragg, like that
Yeah,
Chiswick band? That's what it
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
reminded me of. It's kind of like a throwback to like his younger, harsher
Younger
vocals.
guys. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
is a true lifer. I feel like that's like, the kind of like,
And he's down for the cause, man.
yeah,
He's put his principles are always above, his commercial success.
yeah. It's weird to think of though Chiswick Records, to think that's like where Billy Bragg, like one of the great
Yeah,
heroes of,
yeah, yeah.
and then also, you know, the other Chiswick
Yeah,
band.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I guess I don't know. Maybe in those days that I don't think the label knew what they were getting themselves into on the other side of things, but they found out.
I think it's just like also, yeah, I think it was way before they became as horrible as they would become.
Yeah,
But I feel like it's almost an allegory for punk, that punk is like such an amazing thing, but it's like, I don't know, like the force in Star Wars or something, where it could be manipulated for good or evil depending on whose hands it's in.
100%. And say what you will about that band Shift to the Right. Fast forward now, 40, 50 years later, and there's a hell of a lot of other bands that have done that. And not necessarily to maybe that degree, and maybe not as a band, but a lot of band members, that I call them boomer punks. They were all about it, and suddenly somebody got in their algorithm or something, and now they've got a whole new set of facts that are opposite of everything they've sang about and believed in their whole entire lives. And some of them, I think it's just they want a bigger tax break, and some of them, I think, really have been brainwashed by misinformation, because I don't think you can take someone who's made it through 40 plus years of their life that was a certain way, and then they did an about face, and not tell me that it's not a bit of a sickness, or a real manipulation of the facts, because people don't just typically change everything about their makeup and their beliefs later in life like that, unless there's a real manipulation of the facts or environment or whatever it might be.
Well, I think sadly, us musicians touring bands were very susceptible to this kind of brainwashing because there's so much downtime to look at YouTube and to get into conspiracies and to just sort of like be in your own head and lose touch with the real realities of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that yeah, that misinformation, and just what you look at on your phone and how long you look at it is, like you said, that it can manipulate someone who's held long-standing beliefs that shape their whole lives, and suddenly they've changed. It makes you think, if we're making a comment about how much it's changed punk rock friends in their 40s, like, what, it's no surprise that on a larger level, the world is where it's at, and the division is where it's at, and the people running governments are where they're at, because the tools of manipulation are right there. And it's, the irony is we have more tools than ever to know the truth. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you got to go to the wall for the encyclopedia anymore. But all these tools have actually caused more lies, and harder to find the truth amongst all the misinformation. I miss the days of the crack in the old encyclopedia.
Well, I feel like there was a hierarchy of information that existed before when these were all physical things. And like to tie it back to music, like when we make a record, like you spend years making a record, right?
Right.
But when you put that record out, it has the same informational value as someone saying something out of pocket on Instagram or Twitter, or like a celebrity just doing something completely silly, or someone in the punk rock world doing something completely stupid. Like there's it's just all information now. There's no more like encyclopedia of culture. It's now just like likes and clicks, and it's the sad democratization, I guess, of everything.
That's why I think a song can have like a greater long-term impact because, you know, whereas a post or a breaking news flash comes and goes and it's replaced by the next one, there is, a song, might, be a lot closer to an encyclopedia than it was, because it's going to live there. You can delete the tweet or whatever you want to call it. The record's going to be there and it's going to live, and the band's kind of going to stand by what they sang about. That's why I feel like even the bands that have shifted a little, sometimes they write these like vague songs where like their conspiracies and their new thoughts are like cloaked in daggers of secrecy and stuff because they don't really want to say the facts because deep down inside they know that holy shit, this is gonna sound messed up in 10 years. So but anyway, I obviously come up on the subject, but I really do my best to not try to focus on what other people are doing that may and may not be wrong or to what I'd agree or disagree with. I feel like the band's just trying to the shoes that I walk in is to try to do what I believe in my heart is right, how I was raised and brought up and what I believe, and carry that message and hopefully be a force of positivity and hope and change. And the one thing I can say about the Dropkick Murphys, like us, hate us, whatever it is, the tune's never changed. We've been who we are for 30 years, coming up on 30 years, and that was who we were long before the band ever started. So we're consistent. We can say that. So
Do you look at the band in terms of being in different phases depending on who the singer is or who's doing vocals in it, or to you is it just one thing?
no, I've always said Dropkick Murphys is an entity in and of itself. People love Dropkick Murphys for what we stand for, how we treat others, the things we sing about. And I've always said anybody, within reason, right? Like you have to be able to obviously like sing the songs like in tune or whatever, or know how to play an instrument. But for the most part, if like all the people that have joined the band later in life, it's like they come into it with those facts laid down. Like, hey, you better be ready to do this. Give it 100% of your heart. Treat people with respect, and if you're not, there's the door. And that would include me too, being replaceable. And but at the same time, there's been very rare instances. We had one guy leave. Um, I would say kind of musical differences. Mark, who was young and wanted to just like explore his talents, and that was cool because he was open and honest about it. And we've had a lot of other guys leave for everything from women to job security to whatever. But there's only one guy that we really don't stay friendly with, and that was from many, many years ago. So like I really do view it as family, like the whole thing, whether you were in this band for a year or 25 years, you're family to me. And because if you made it in this band for any amount of time, you had to have carried yourself with that code, and I have a lot of respect for that, but as you know, it's not the easiest lifestyle either,
No, sir.
Um,
No.
we're blessed with an amazing opportunity. I never traveled, saw outside of New England before the band. I've got to see the world and, provide for a family. It's amazing. But you also miss a lot. You miss wakes and weddings and funerals and birthdays and stuff like that. And that I think has a wearing effect on guys, when you're missing children's birthdays and stuff like that. And especially when you get seven guys in a band. At one point we had to say, hey, guys, unless it's like a major one, like, first or 10th, we gotta just miss them because it was getting to a point where we almost couldn't tour. Either that or we were gonna have to start, I was gonna have to start being involved in the ovulation process so we could try to time all the kids' birthdays for the same month or something. Uh, but it's just crazy. But over 30 years, man, there's a lot of growing up that happens. You see it in your own kids, you see it in your bandmates' kids. You go, holy crap, how you know, it's been cool the extended Dropkick Murphys family side of things has been really cool watching families grow up around you.
Not to get morbid, but like looking at something like Guar, would you want the Dropkick Murphys to carry on if you're no longer able to do it? Like, is that something you want to be something that's like
Uh,
larger than?
yeah, it would all depend on the reasons and, if I was unable to do it and the people that wanted to carry on wanted to do it for the same principles they're doing it today, yeah. If I didn't want to carry on because I thought we had lost our way or lost our voice or didn't have the heart and passion, but other guys were like, man, but I'd like to make a buck still, then I'd probably be less inclined. But like if I was like, it's like with Al, like he's in a situation where he can't be on the road and that's, him being all for the family continuing, but it would be a different story if it was over, like I said, like feeling like we had nothing left to offer or something like that. And ironically, I don't know whether it's the times. I don't know. I got a huge second wind from doing that Guthrie stuff. It just was so inspiring because we had worked with his unpublished lyrics before, but never in the way we did on those two records. And it was like a real reset for the career. I felt like it was like the halfway point of the career. I don't know. I don't think I have another 30 years in me, but a halfway point in terms of like a reset to like not only taking that volume break and doing something acoustic to really make you want to be loud again, but also like looking at the importance of of a song, the importance of a song, the importance of lyrics, like the importance of like taking a stand in your lyrics and not being afraid to, you know, share your opinions and your voices. And right now, I don't want to soapbox or point the fingers at anyone, but I'm a little disheartened by how many bands that I love and respect are choosing to just kind of keep their head down in the moment and stay silent. Some for good reason. They might have a family member that could be targeted, that might not have legal status, things like that. There's a few people I know like that. And there's some bands that, maybe there's a member that doesn't agree. Um, and then some bands that they're all on the same page, but they don't want to hurt the business of their band. So they might all speak out individually. But if you start to speak out on your socials, here comes the shut up and sing crowd. And there goes, a boycott by a certain amount of your fan base. But my attitude is we've always sung about not backing down from a fight. We've always sung about standing up to bullies. We've always sung the same thing. So to not stand up in the moment now would just be the most cowardice, hypocritical thing you could do. We made our bed of being who we are. And so, like, there's no shut up and sing. There's not even an option, you know. Um, so I guess maybe, there are some other bands that have been, yeah, they've been political, but they've also, I guess we've been more political all along than a lot of bands, but I don't know. I want to look back when this is all said and done. Hopefully, look back from my couch and not from a gulag. But when it's all said and done, I want to look back and say, man, I am glad that we did the right thing when the moment matters.
You'll always have a couch up here in Toronto to hide
Thank
out
you.
as long as that keeps you
Thank you.
safe, which is
Thank you.
not very long once it gets to this point.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, like it's also just going back to Dropkick Murphys and sort of the family of the band. It's interesting going through like the lineup, and it's kind of like a who's who. I kind of touched on this briefly last time when I called you the ringmaster of the circus that is Boston punk, but you do have like be it the outlets, be it like Fit for Abuse, be it the Bruisers, I guess not from Boston but from the general area, that you do have like a lot of sort of like disparate worlds coming together in the Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah, the tentacles go far and wide and go way back to the Boston roots. You could even go farther, Bill Close, our very first drummer for a few gigs, and the guy that taught me to play was the guitarist in the Freeze, so the roots are deep and but that's been one of the cooler parts of the band, that it wasn't just some rando thing that came out of, I don't know. It just I like, even the band name Dropkick Murphys having the connection to, an old kind of I don't know if you know the story, but the
It,
story of Dropkick Murphys is it was an old dry and out spot run by a guy named John Dropkick Murphy. His nickname was Dropkick, and it was like pre-fancy rehab, pre-detoxes, pre the medical treatment side. Back in those days, you just got thrown in the nut house.
yeah.
And he had a boxing gym slash wrestling gym, and he would you'd go there to taper off, and he'd give you 6 drinks the first day, 5 the second day, 4, so on, and then he'd get you training and fighting and running and try to build you up physically. And you know, if you grew up around here and an old school Boston family that happened to have some alcoholism, whether it was a parent or grandparent, someone at the kitchen table, dinner table, family party, whatever, was talking about, well, when I was in Dropkicks, and you didn't even say when I went to Dropkick, I was in Dropkicks, and everyone's got great stories about, just someone in their family being there. Of course, it was long gone by the time I was, came into the world. But Dropkick's son, who's elderly now, would come to the shows and bring his kids and grandkids, and the family got a kick out of the fact that that the band name kept the name alive in that way. So I always liked that there was just heavy Boston roots in every way with the band.
So did you meet Matt Kelly when you were doing shows? Like were you doing shows for Dive back then?
No, no, I booked a lot of shows at the Rap, but I didn't. I never booked Dive, and I met Matt through him being an early fan of Dropkicks, and a lot of the guys that you know ended up joining the band, and Evan, who works tour managers, one of those kids that was in, he's in a bunch of the photo. There's people that were like in the photos, at 15 years old in the front row, and then they end up in the band. So James Lynch, who's been with us for 25, 26 years. He was in the Ducky Boys, or he was actually in a band called the Westies before the Ducky Boys that we used to play with a lot. And Jeff DeRosa was in a band called the Vigilantes that my label Flat Records put out one of their singles, and actually one of their full lengths. And so it was just like, it was even family then, it was just like, it was never the type of thing where like we're putting an ad in the paper for a guitar player that we don't know. It was always someone that we knew.
We touched on it last time, but I think the Dropkick Murphys were that band that unified Boston. It seems like it's really weird as like an outsider looking at things as just a fan, how segregated kind of things were musically in the 90s in Boston. Like there were a lot of a lot of great bands. Not a lot of them made it out of Boston, I find, like in popularity wise or touring wise. But you guys, it seemed like drew everyone together. Like youth crew kids liked you guys, skinhead kids liked you guys, like kids that were into more victory style stuff liked you guys. Like you guys could pull everyone, and it felt like the city got behind you.
Yeah, in the early days when we were just starting out, um, well, one, we knew people in all those scenes, and then two, when we were starting out, we'd play, you know, we'd we'd be opening shows for everything from, whatever British Oi band that was coming over to New York City hardcore bands that were coming through to, so like we would play with everyone and anybody, and then did the same once we were the headliner, having not just bands in our niche, and um yeah, I definitely think that worked in our benefit for sure. Um and even touring wise, when as you're booking a DIY tour, um, you're not too pick and choose. Yeah, I mean, it was always someone that like fit with us. So it wasn't like, oh, we'll play with the hair metal band, but we would cross. It might be a hardcore show, and like you said, because people knew that we ran in those circles, like it wasn't weird for us to get added onto a hardcore show in Chicago, and then we might go play an Oi festival a few cities over. But growing up in Boston, those worlds always, maybe not newer school hardcore, but those worlds always blended. Maybe not so much in the '90s, but like I always thought it's all the same to me, and I feel so blessed that we've been able to not only play and mingle into other parts of the scenes, but even just musically, that like we could do a straight up Irish jig, we could do a ballad, we could do a total hardcore song, all on the same record. And it was just like, oh, that's what Dropkick Murphys do. It wasn't like this is weird because that's what we did from our very first album. Now, if a band puts out two or three albums of doing one thing, and then all of a sudden they're gonna check a ballad at you or switch styles, that's when you're gonna get, crucified by the crowd. But we did it right from the start.
It's been kind of brought up on here before that there's a divide between it's a legendary divide and between New York and Boston. By the time you guys started playing, was that completely dissipated, or just something that didn't even affect you and the way you book shows prior to that?
There was definitely, the three-letter stuff kind of going on with the crews and stuff, but we always I don't know if it was like blissful or ignorant. We'd play on some like New York hardcore show down there, and they're like fucking dickheads from Boston, but like they never beat us up. They just were like, it's those fucking dickheads from Boston, because you knew I was going to get on stage and talk shit. I don't know. You look at, I'm sure you're familiar with Kneecap, and you know, I remember Kneecap. We had Kneecap before they were big. We had Kneecap on the last show we did before the pandemic. It was in London. It was us, Coxbarra, and Kneecap opening,
What
and
a
here
show!
in London, and Kneecap's up there talking shit about the British, and you know obviously a Coxbarra crowd is by no means right leaning, but they're also
There might be
proud
some right-leaning
proud to,
people in that crowd, like
right. But they're
misaligned,
proud.
but
They're proud, even if they're just proud of their British music culture. They're proud to be British. And here you got a hip hop Republican Irish Republican band shitting on London in London, but they would do it with just enough tongue in cheek that they wouldn't get the shit kicked out of them. And I think that's what always saved me. I just had a bit of a I'm fucking around kind of attitude towards it. And I got away with a lot of shit talking over the years in many cities, including Montreal and other Boston sports rival places. But in terms of the pure like scene, hardcore band rival and stuff, that was dissipated. Yeah, there was all bands playing together. I mean, Agnostic Front took us on the business took us on our first tour, and Agnostic Front took us on our second tour. So like if AF takes you on tour, you pretty much got the blessing from New York on down from there. So yeah, everyone always treated us really honestly, no one's ever treated us, with the exception of like straight out boneheads that were coming after us, like the scene in each city with regular people and bands, and always treated us so well. We are so lucky for that, and how kind people were. But we also did the same back in the early days. We were known for rolling out the red carpet for a band in Boston too. So I think that's why that goodwill came back to us so much.
Well, since you brought up Montreal, I got to bring up an infamous story that was told on this podcast by one professional wrestler, Sami Zayn, where he made the mistake of going to a Dropkick Murphys show in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. And I believe he was unceremoniously thrown out of the show.
That's awesome. It sounds it's a I burnt a Canadians jersey on stage in Montreal before. A fan threw it on stage and I set it on fire, which nowadays is just not a good idea for many reasons. But you know, it was like people hated it, but at the same time, they grew to expect it, you know. But and I was no Welsh. I remember I lost a bet. I forget what the bet was, but I lost a bet in Toronto, and I wore a Darcy Tucker shirt on stage the whole show in Toronto, and I kept my end of the bargain in those instances. One time, one of my favorite stories about Montreal is we were opening for Metallica in Montreal, and they had one of those huge thrusts that goes way out into the crowd. I might have told the story the last time.
No, you didn't, but this is going to
And
go amazing. I can tell.
yeah, and Metallica is so cool because usually, like, I'm not really a huge Metallica guy musically, but they're the balls, like, just as the way they carry themselves as a band, because typically in those shows, if a Metallica has a thrust, or if a band has a thrust that goes way out like that, you're told, like, don't go on that fucking thrust. That's Metallica's thrust, and some bands will even remove a piece so you can't get to the thrust. But
That was literally the
we
one rule when we opened for the Foo Fighters. Like they were
right.
the coolest people ever, but it's like, do not go on Dave's walkway.
Right. And I get it because they're paying all the money for it and all that. But Metallica was just like, we're Metallica. We don't really care what you do. You're still not going to upstage us. So anyway, I had my son who's now 19, and I had him with me on the tour. We were doing a 2-week Canadian tour, and my son was probably 8 years old at the time, and he was, on the tour. He was really quiet because it was his first time, like, by himself without a sibling or his mother there, just me and him and the guys. And uh, that morning at the hotel, he said, "Dad, can I get this doll?" And it was a Canadian's doll. And I'm like, "What the hell do you want with that?" A little stuffed animal kind of doll in the gift shop. And we had just been up in Nova Scotia, and he got this walking stick. So he gets the doll and he ties it to the handle of the walking stick. Then he flips the walking stick over. So he's walking all day, putting the doll in the dirt. And, backstage at the show, it was an outdoor, festival style show. And all the Montreal crew people, "Hey, what are you doing with that doll?" Blah, blah, blah. And then comes time to go on. And right before we go on, he says, "Dad, can I come on stage with you at some point?" And I was like, "Whoa, sure. What do you want to do?" He goes, "You'll see." So I look over and I see him with one of our roadies, and they have a knife out and they're like carving at the doll at him. I'm like, what is going on? So I said, "Hey," during the show, and there's 25,000 people there. And I said, "Hey, everybody, I gotta introduce you to someone. I want to bring out my son, Liam. He's 8 years old." And the crowd cheers. And I said, "I gotta warn you though, before he comes out, Liam does not like the Canadians." And crowd gives a friendly boo. And he comes out on stage with the doll and the walking stick, and he goes all the way out to thrust. It looked like he was a mile away down the ramp, and he's smashing the doll on the ground with the stick, and he gets to the very end of the ramp, and he had loosened up the doll's neck, and he rips the head off the thing. And we have the greatest photo that we took from the stage. So you see just of his back, and he's holding the doll split in two up like a freaking Viking or something. And then you can see all the people's faces in the crowd, and some people are laughing, some people, are looking angry, some people giving him the finger, and it's just like, the whole. And that next day, a bunch of Montreal newspapers wrote articles about the show, mentioned it, and called me one of them called me a bad father. And I did some press over it. I was like, "Bad father," I said. that was the proudest moment of my life as a parent. So, but even Montreal's treated us, you know, amazing. Toronto Canadians, let's forget about Canadians. Of Canadians, hands down, the nicest people on earth. And while I'm at it, apologies on behalf of my stupid ass country.
Well, as we talked about last time, we gave you Jordan Peterson and we gave you Gavin McGinnis. So believe me, we are not without our faults up here.
Oh, I know. Every family's got some, but you know, we've taken it to a whole new level down here. So
Yeah, I feel like unfortunately it was like a seed that once it hit fertile soil in America, the stupidity was just able to just grow
yeah,
with these guys. And
yeah,
it's a but I think it's a global thing right now. Like
yeah,
this sort of like stupid it's like a stupidity epidemic right now that we're faced with.
yeah. You know, when young males around the world are idolizing an Andrew Tate or a Charlie Kirk, the flavor of the month here is like, how dare you say something about Charlie Kirk? It's like, hey man, I'm just saying what I've heard this guy say out of his own mouth. And you can't tell me it's not racist. You can't tell me it's not divisive. Yeah, it is freedom of speech. And I'm not saying anybody should be shot as a result of political violence, by no means. But I'm also not going to be bullied into making him a martyr. Um, because I think he was a divisive guy. He definitely shouldn't have been killed, and that's been turned into a very divisive thing for the country. Not that I think that it wasn't the right or Israel or somebody that killed him anyway, but I don't know if we have another hour, so maybe we can
Well, it's interesting.
not go down that rabbit hole.
Well, I went to a rally the other day, like confronting a bunch of fucking Canada First Nazis. As I said, we've got idiots up here, and to like look across and see straight up classic anti-Semitic Nazis arm in arm with Zionists holding up placards of Charlie Kirk with Canadian flags draped around it. It's like, are any of these people talking about how fucking different all their ideologies are, and the only thing that unites them is being wrong and hateful?
Well, that's why in some ways those movements like America First, Canada First have been successful because they'll unite as one based on under the banner of hate or division, whereas the left can oftentimes be, um, you don't align enough with this, it's much more divided. And I think in a lot of instances, that's in a typical situation, that's not bad because it's uh, healthy debate and sharing of opinions, but in the situation we find ourselves in now, it's like, guys, ladies, everybody, you're you're small. This is good versus evil, not, progressive versus centrist. And I don't know. I just want to put an end to the, you know, the inmates running the asylum. I mean, right now there's no one even governing, it's just like you can't, people, can we just get, at least you guys get health care, man.
Yeah.
Well, you have like grocery bills, like, the facts with your own eyes no longer matter. Like you go look at a grocery bill, and I was just looking at something, and I feel coffee, and it went from like I think it was a Maxwell House or some big kind of container of coffee, and 9 months ago it was $12, and it's $24 now. And but you got a president on TV that tells you prices are lower. Well, you got a president on TV that says the government is shut down because the Democrats want to give illegal aliens health care. And that's not the truth. There's a policy that says if anybody goes to a hospital in a dire condition, they have to be treated. That's just period, human. Like you shouldn't be on your deathbed and someone say, insurance card, please. And the the Republicans have morphed that into uh, you know, the Democrats want to give all your money away to free health care for illegal aliens. What? We don't even have free health care. What are you talking about? Or, uh, you know, bailouts to Argentina. under the guise of America first, but our own farmers don't get a bailout. But the truth does not matter. It's all about who screams loudest and who won't shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and how you can kind of entertain people. Like that was the other weird part about seeing the Canada First side of this protest was like seeing people that were just there for the lulls, like guys in inflatable dinosaur suits that didn't necessarily have any sort of political agenda, but thought it was funny to go there and yell at a bunch of people and say crazy racist stuff to people.
Yeah, own the libs, as they'd say down here. I'd rather own the libs than be broke and homeless, as long as you're owning the libs.
Yeah. And it's like this is what they're trying to distract us from. Like you're saying, groceries. We have healthcare in Canada, but groceries like I saw McDonald's bragging about how their combos were $12 the other day on a special day of the week. It's like those were only like $4.99 when I was a kid, $3.99 when I was a kid. That's hyperinflation at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
But still get mad about the most insignificant thing you can. Like, so what was the first band you booked? Do you remember?
Um, might have been a business show, or maybe a swinging utters show, or probably something local. Actually, it would have definitely been something local. But as far as like touring bands, it was definitely either one of the British oi bands coming over. 'Cause, you'd always be trying to lure them over with like a weekend, right? Like if you're trying to get someone from England, you'd be saying, "Hey, come over," and you get together with someone else from New York. Someone else might be putting, the show in Rhode Island. Can we string together 3 or 4 shows to get it? Honestly, and the only motive we had was to get a band we liked to come play a show so we could see them.
Yeah.
That was it. I didn't care if I made him any money. But then I would start to get put in situations where I had to book bands that I'm not, not to say I liked them or didn't like them, but like for instance, like a swinging others who we were friends with, but Stormy Shepherd booked them from Leave Home Booking, and then she'd be like, "Hey, can you do me a favor and book, I don't know, Guttermouth, for example, or something?" And then I'd end up booking a show that it was a band that you know I wasn't passionate enough about to want to book the show, but I'd kind of have to if I wanted to be able to book the other bands on that agent's roster. So then it turned into like a little bit more of a chore, I suppose. But and then Dropkick started shortly thereafter, and that was obviously one of the reasons that we were able to stand out amongst the scene because we didn't have to sit back and wait for someone to offer us a show. I'd just put a show on. So, we always had the ability to play.
It's interesting to think that like you, Jamie Josta from Hatebreed, Steve Aoki are all booking DIY punk shows in that same period of the early 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamie was definitely the parallel musical scenes. But parallel we did shows with Hatebreed back in those days, but we were definitely similar in age mindset, what we were into it for. Um, I always got along with Jamie for that reason.
And both you guys achieved some of the largest sort of, not to say it's about commercial success, but commercial success in your bands. Like I think there's probably some sort of correlation with, I don't know, understanding the world of this music and then making this music.
Yeah, and also just being a hustler because you gotta grind. You got to be ready to go out and make it happen. And we applied those same principles to get into other cities. Keep in mind, when I'd book a show, when Dropkicks were a local headliner, we'd have 6, 7 other bands from 6, 7 other cities. And then I'd say, you owe us in your city. And you just played to 800 kids in Boston. So don't embarrass your scene. When we come, you better have a good showing, or I'm going to give you shit and say how great Boston was. And man, a kid in Pittsburgh or wherever we would be pulling out, they'd be at gunpoint making their grandmother come if she had to, because they were going to fill that room out of pride in their scene. They didn't want to have a shit show after they had such an amazing time in Boston. But you also had mid 90s, you had 10, 12 bands that could fill the Rat as a headliner. Dropkicks, uh, Ducky Boys, The Trouble, Showcase Showdown, Toxic Narcotic, The Unseen. The list goes on and on. And so there were shows going every week, you know. Um, and that led to obviously it having such a good scene. It was like, whether it was Blank 77 or whoever, there was just so many opportunities for a band to be able to play and play in front of a lot of kids.
But like even in on that song, or that song on that comp, Boston bands, like these bands were big in Boston, but no one really made it out until of this kind of era. Like Unseen, I guess, toured a bit as well. But you guys in 10 Yard Fight, in my eyes, I guess afterwards. But it's really like you guys is one of the first bands that's really, Sam Black Church, like that. This STP, this whole wave of Boston bands from prior to that is doesn't seem like it really translated outside of the city. Even Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, a lot of bands in our particular little niche of that scene, it was like, fucking Showcase Showdown. Like, and this is the beauty of punk rock. Talk about all walks of life, And Showcase Showdown, they were like Harvard kids, and they were like, well, we're just doing the band for fun. We're not going to fucking get in a van. We're going to have careers and lives. You had, the Ducky Boys were really never trying to necessarily go be rock stars and tour or whatever. Yeah, it's just so hard to do it, it's like keeping a lineup together, keeping the bills paid of it. It's just I credit the fact that we were a little older, so we had like worked and had jobs and kind of knew you had to pay your bills, and we applied that same mentality to the band. You pay your bills, like uh, if you made $100 for a show, uh, and it cost you $50 in expenses to get there, you put the 50 bucks and then you split the 50, and you'd have some bands go where guys would be like, we made $100, give me my 25 if they were a 4-piece. It's like, um, you weren't talking about some of the brightest bulbs on earth either, myself included. I was always just like, I was a kid, even before like booking shows and music, I would be booking like hall parties. I was just always that kind of, I was a promoter at heart. I mean, I became a boxing promoter too. I like, I liked like the challenge of like gathering people together and trying to see if you could make nothing into something.
Yeah. I think that's probably like what led to the band kind of always fighting through all these different adversities that came up to it is like you gotta hustle, like you're saying earlier. Like this is a hustler's kind of game being in a band.
Yeah, and then you get far enough into it a couple of years and you go, well, I'm not laying down and quitting now just because we have some adversity.
Yeah.
But
Well, anytime you want to come back on here, Ken, and talk about the good times, the bad times of this thing, you're always welcome.
oh, it's great talking with you, and great reminiscing about older times and commiserating about current times and everything in between. But we'll keep doing what we do, and you know, I can guarantee you this will never be. We will never waver for whatever that matters.